Hello lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm bringing you another 8 that are great, and this time we're going to be talking about contemporary or literary fiction. So it's not often that I read something that doesn't have some kind of speculative sci-fi or fantasy element, especially in fiction, but I do have 8 titles here that I think are as close to straight literary fiction as possible on my shelves and are ones that I've really enjoyed. So we're going to talk about 8 today, like I said, and we're going to jump in first of all with Bluff by, unfortunately I can't remember the author's name, it's going to go here. This is a really interesting story about a woman who is a magician and she does like close-up card magic, and it's basically, there's not much money in it, and she gets approached by somebody who plays poker who wants to essentially like a big scam where they're going to do like a sleight of hand to rig the game, and it's about her getting dragged into the underbelly and kind of seedy world of poker and cheating at poker, and how she uses her magic skills and kind of bluffing skills along the way. I really enjoyed this. I think that the characters were really fascinating, and I also loved all the kind of twists and turns within the story. It goes into some really kind of fun places, and I definitely really enjoy the details both about kind of the magic world in general but also the world of poker, and I really felt like I learned quite a lot about both of them too, and that's kind of one of my favourite things about contemporary, is when they can bring in something from the real world that I then get to learn about through the story. The next one I want to talk about is The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. This is a wonderful tale that was quite popular on BookTube probably about 3 years ago now, and this is about 4 siblings who go to see a fortune teller when they're kids, and their fortune teller tells them when they're going to die, and then the rest of the book follows each of the individual siblings and kind of has a full chapter dedicated to them, where it looks at kind of what they were doing in their life leading up to the moment of their death. Each sibling is very different, and I really liked the different points of view. It's something that I don't normally enjoy in books, but I think Chloe Benjamin does an excellent job with it, and it's just a really kind of rich, lyrical, emotive writing style that was incredibly kind of gorgeous and sort of pretty as we went along. It did remind me of almost like a contemporary version of something like The Night Circus, and I really liked especially the younger 2 siblings, Simon and I can't remember the girl's name, but they both ended up going on to kind of careers in the performing world, and I really enjoyed the 2 different elements of their kind of performances as somebody who has a performing background, so I definitely enjoyed that. The next one I want to talk about is A History of Loneliness by John Boyne. Now John Boyne is a bit of a controversial author. He's very hit and miss for a lot of people. I personally really enjoy this one, but I've definitely not enjoyed other titles from him. A History of Loneliness is about a Catholic priest both before and after the big story breaks about paedophilia within the Catholic Church and the kind of conspiracy of it being covered up, and it's about how those revelations interacted with him and his faith, and how it really shook how he viewed himself and his life's work, and also his interactions with some of his classmates, one in particular when he was studying to become a priest. It's very emotional, and it definitely looks at kind of religion and the role of religion in someone's life. I did read this now I think about 4 or 5 years ago, so I don't know if it's something that I would still stand by now, but at the time I really enjoyed it, and I found it interesting to read it alongside the book Spotlight, which is the non-fiction journalist's tale of how they actually broke that story and kind of exposed this huge scandal. So it was really interesting to compare the sort of more analytical, here's what happened side to the sort of kind of one of the human effects of it within this book. One that a lot of people have heard of and it's got a lot of hype for very good reason is Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. This is the winner of the Booker Prize in 2019, and it follows 12 different women and kind of their experiences of being women within the world. It talks a lot about kind of intersectionality and different identities that people can have and how they sort of can end up interacting with each other. It talks a lot about relationships. It's got fantastic representation for every facet of life you could possibly think of. The only thing I didn't like was at the end it felt the need to kind of crowbar all of these women into like meeting in different ways, and also there is like very little punctuation in the book that is just a like feature that I don't think adds anything, but it didn't like remove from my reading experience either. It's very literary, and it's I think all of the women are like really well realized. It does discuss sexual assault and domestic abuse in various points, and then maybe a few other trigger warnings for some other things that I can't remember, so it would be worth checking it out beforehand, because I know it definitely gets very serious in places. But I really enjoyed it, more so than I was expecting, to be honest. I was a little on the fence about this one, but it really did blow me away. A book that could be totally in like the Hall of Fame for how to do unlikable characters is Herman Koch's The Dinner. This book is just packed with awful, despicable people, and it's fascinating watching their various different ways of how despicable they are unfold. And it follows two couples where the gentleman and the couples are brothers, and it is them having a meeting over a very fancy dinner to discuss the fact that their sons have got into some serious trouble with the law, and it's about them trying to use their power and their privilege to get them out of trouble, and also the kind of veneer of this hyper civilized 3-course very fancy meal over the top of all of their kind of feelings of like anger and rage and a kind of dislike of each other, and just sort of this kind of veneer of civility over the top of a lot of really raw, powerful emotion. I loved them. I think that it's a fantastic tale. Nobody in it is good. They are all awful, but I really enjoyed this kind of clashing of the two worlds, and this idea of like I say, like the civility on top and then this like bubbling rage underneath. So yeah, everybody in this book sucked in the best way possible. One that I think might get a little magical towards the end, but only the tiniest smidge of magic-y contemporary, is Familiar Things by Hwang Sok-yong. This is translated fiction, and it is set in Korea, I believe. And yes, and it is about a 14-year-old boy who goes with his mother to land on what's Flower Island, which is actually just like a rubbish tip. And there are people who live on the island, and they kind of trawl through the rubbish to find things that they can then salvage and sell. And it is about his experiences of very extreme poverty, and kind of how his 14-year-old brain sort of copes with it and finds magic in these areas. It was a really lovely, quite quiet story that I really enjoyed from like a cultural perspective, and just sort of as like a character study perspective. And I definitely enjoyed getting into the head of the 14-year-old boy. Like I said, there are the odd elements of magic in it, but really only the faintest touches, and it's just about kind of how people interact with sort of bad things when they come their way. I hope that made sense, but it really encapsulates that kind of quiet beauty that I think translated fiction, especially from sort of East Asia in general, Japan and Korea, I think do really well. It's a particular style and kind of flavour of writing that if you've read any kind of Japanese or Korean literature, you'll know what I mean by it, and I think that this is a wonderful example of it, like the quiet beauty of kind of humanity. It's just something which this book is kind of teeming with. It reminded me a lot of Before the Coffee Gets Cold, so if you like that book, you'll definitely like this one, but I've not heard as many people talk about this. One that is fantastic for anybody who's a fan of contemporary and performance art, and that is The Museum of Modern Love by Heather Rose. This is a novel inspired by Marina Abramovic, who is a real woman. She is a performance artist who has done some really incredible, powerful work in her career, and this one is focused on a performance piece that she did at the MoMA, which was where she sat in a chair and people could come and sit opposite her, and they weren't allowed to say anything, and I don't think they were allowed to like interact with her particularly, but it was about sort of her sitting quietly, and I think she did it for like a month. And it's about, this book is kind of the various people coming to see this and how this kind of moment impacts all of their lives, and it also includes a little bit of like biographical detail about Marina and kind of conversations about performance art in general. It's quite short, but it was really powerful and beautiful, and again, I loved you'll notice performance is like a recurring theme through a lot of these books. The next one's also a performance-y book as well, but I just really found it fascinating looking at like how art can impact people and the various different ways that these different characters kind of took and understood her work and kind of projected their own ideas into her work, which is really what art is for. So very cool, interesting book. Very cool, interesting woman. And then the final one, like I said, is indeed about performance as well, and this one's about ballet, and that is The Four Temperaments by Yona McDonough. This is kind of a family drama at its heart, and it follows the character Ginny, who is an aspiring ballerina who is getting kind of more and more noticed in the ballet world, and it is about her starting an affair with one of the gentlemen who works in the orchestra, who is actually married, and then she kind of comes into this family's life and sort of kind of explodes in a dazzling kind of cry of colour and beauty that sort of really shakes up a lot of what is happening for the people in there. And it's really looking at kind of family relationships in general and sort of what we hide from the people that we love, and also what does it mean to be in love and to have these really intense emotions, because Ginny's only really felt that for ballet before she ended up in this family, and it's about her kind of dealing with that reckoning. I think it's lovely. I think it's a really great character study in general, and again, I really enjoyed the conversations about ballet in it. I love books that really focus on performance art and what people get from kind of the arts in general. I've not heard many people talk about this, so I think that it's a great book. Trigger warning if you are somebody who suffers with OCD, one of the characters does also have that, and it goes into quite a lot of detail about that, so I don't know if that might be something which somebody might struggle with, but I just wanted to mention that there. But yeah, really, really powerful, beautiful book. I've reread this book so many times. So there you have it. There are 8 great contemporary, I nearly say contemporary romances, they're not, contemporary / literary fiction books. Again, like I said, it's not something that I read overly, so if you do know of any other really good books that are kind of contemporary, especially ones that do focus on performing or arts or kind of theatre or anything like that, do let me know in the comments down below. I might have just enough to maybe do another one of these at some point. And like I always say, if you have any particular genres that you'd like to see from me within these 8 that are great, do let me know. I'm going to have one coming on essay collections fairly soon, and also one on British history fairly soon, because I've realised I have enough of both of those. And there might even be a classics one coming soon, but again, if you have any very specific requests, please do let me know. So yeah, that is it from me. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye!